All righty, Council, I'll call us to order at 7:12. And first item in front of us is the approval of tonight's agenda, which is, I need a mover and seconder that recommended action that the Special Committee of the Whole agenda for November 15, 2017 be approved as presented. Councillor Saunders and Councillor Lauder, comments, questions on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Does any member find themselves in a position of pecuniary interest in tonight's session? Seeing none at this time, if you find yourself in that spot as we move along, let us know. Moving on to agenda item number 4, which is Finance and Corporate Services, and I'll turn the chair over to the Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have consent agenda. We have no items under consent agenda. Under 4B, matters for consideration. Tonight we are here to talk budget, and there is a motion that I will put on the floor and ask for a mover and a seconder, and I think there will be some discussion. So the recommended action is that the 2018 operating budget be adopted as presented, and that the 2018 and 2019 capital budget be adopted as presented, and further that a contribution of up to $382,485 is approved for the Penetanguishene Public Library to fund their 2018 operating requirements. A mover, Councillor Saunders.
Madam Chair, if I may, in the interest of simplicity, I'm going to suggest that all three of those items be separated into separate motions. In other words, the operating budget to be dealt with separately, capital dealt with separately, and the library dealt with separately.
Can we do that?
Yeah, we can.
All right, well, we'll take the first part of it then, that the 2018 operating budget be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor LaRue, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Discussion. Carrie, did you have anything that you wanted to add? And I do believe His Worship has something that he'd like to bring forward as well. But Carrie, we'll go with you first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll just quickly review the summary and the history of our budget meetings and where we are, how we got to where we are this evening.
I don't know if I'm seeing some members of council. We've got the documentation in front of us. I'm not sure that we need to go there.
Enough said.
Thank you. Your Worship, you...
I think in light of Councillor Saunders going 1, 2, 3, I'll wait for my final motion at the end for seconder support. So I think you go through the three on the table, and then I'll throw the fourth one out for consideration.
Okay, Council, we've had good discussion on our 2018 budget. Yes. Are we prepared to move it tonight as it sits? So I have a mover and a seconder. I guess I will call for the vote. All those in favor? This is the operating budget, and it was passed unanimously. Thank you, Council. The next part of this was that the 2018 and 2019 capital budget be adopted as presented. I think we've done a great job in that respect as well. I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. Councillor Saunders, Councillor Mayotte. Discussion. Councillor LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, we have to go, and we do have to talk about pickleball again. I have never been stopped on the street so many times over the last 2 weeks when everybody says, "What's the rush?" We entered into a trial program for a year. We told everybody we were going in for a year, and now we're telling everybody that we don't want to go in for a year and we want to go spend $140,000. When you look at our debt increase, it has increased not so much on our actual money, but our debt went up over $900,000 in the last 2 weeks. We don't need to be doing this. We had a group here, I believe it was last week, that did our audited statements. One of the things that they informed us is that for a municipality our size, our average tax base is $500 a year more than anybody else's. So I would rather see us look at weaning that $500 down to lower that to get into what the normal is for everybody else. So again, I do not understand why. I like pickleball. I think it's going to be a great thing. But let's go through the one-year trial. Let's go through the wait. Let's put it in order like it should be with all the other things we do. So I would be asking that that be looked at tonight and removed from the budget.
Are you making a motion, Councillor LaRose?
Sure, we'll make it a motion that it be removed.
Do you have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Rawson? Discussion? Councillor Levy?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to ask perhaps for Councillor LaRose to clarify if you're supporting the resurfacing of the 2 tennis courts at McGuire?
Yes.
Okay, and how would you feel about 1 tennis court for pickleball at the same site for less money?
Well, there'd be a whole lot of wonderment. Do we need 2 courts? Do we need 4 courts? Do we need 6 courts? Right? So we haven't talked to the tennis population. We haven't talked to our Director of Recreation about that. So I wouldn't be able to make a comment whether that was a good idea or a bad idea. Again, why are we rushing? We have 4 tennis courts. We're repairing 2 of them that are down there. I don't have a problem with that, maintaining the infrastructure that we already had. I just don't see the need at this point. We told everybody we were going to try it for a year. Why did we lie to them and say, no, we're not trying it for a year, we're going to cram it through in 1 year, less than a year, so.
Okay, Councillor LaRose, thank you. Councillor LaRue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we know that in the budget as it sits that we were looking at $110,000 to do the two tennis courts. And we would be looking at an additional $135,000 to do 4 pickleball courts. I wonder if we could ask our Director of Recreation to give us the lowdown number-wise what it would be to have 1 tennis court and the 4 pickleball.
Thank you, Councillor LaRue. Sherry, would you have a little information in reference to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor LaRue. So the previous costing that I had provided in my reports is essentially what's reflected there in the capital budget. And if you are looking for DC eligibility and how that affects the level of taxation, then our treasurer will speak to those pieces.
Thank you, Carrie.
In terms of looking at the 2 previous reports that were brought forward to council, in terms of refurbishing or reconstructing 2 existing tennis courts, there's no DC eligibility. However, if half of the courts, if one of the courts was turned into a brand new pickleball court, then there's a proportion of the project that is DC eligible in terms of the additional costs over and above the reconstruction that would be required to turn it into a pickleball court. So that would include lines, additional fencing if required, as well as the netting. So that proportion of the project would be DC eligible. In comparison to a brand new pickleball facility, separate from the tennis courts, that would be 90% DC eligible.
Yes, Your Worship.
If I could, I don't disagree with the conversation on, pickleball and tennis, and I take appreciation of what Councillor Rose is suggesting. But at the end of the day, taxation-wise, this is $13,000 in a $10 million budget. So we're getting hung up on a very small portion of the budget. So I suggest we let the budget go through as is, and it's $13,000 in taxation. If this council decides to do something different next year, the worst case is we have $13,000 surplus on a $10,000 budget. So we're getting hung up on a little chunk of money on a big budget. So let it go as is, and then let's have this conversation in the new year and give Sherry time to do it. And if we change our mind, we have a slight taxation surplus, and we don't spend some DCs. That's the worst case. There's not a bad case to come out here on a $13,000 ask. So that's where we're at. So I'll vote against it, but I think the wise course is just to let it go as is and dig in deep in the new year.
Yes, I suppose if the allocation is there, and we... That is not, but if it's in the budget, it doesn't mean we absolutely have to do it. It's just a budget. It could be, not necessarily. There's a lot of work that needs to be done and stuff that needs to come forward, a report before it would.
Thank you very much. I need more clarification on one tennis court for pickleball. 2 tennis courts, we've budgeted $110,000 for. Am I correct on that?
2 tennis courts, yes, 110,000.
What is the dollar amount suggested for 1 tennis court for pickleball? And what is the breakdown between taxation and DCs, please?
Carrie, perhaps you could answer that question.
Based on the Director of Recreation's Committee of the Whole report on March 22nd of this year, the net cost to refurbish 2 tennis courts was revised based on new information, and the net cost, 100% taxation, is $105,566. Also presented during that report was a net cost estimate for 1 refurbished tennis court plus 4 pickleball courts at a net cost of $115,351, and that would be taxation of about $63,000, and DC preliminary DC eligibility estimate is about $52,000.
Those were the numbers I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie. Further discussion? So the motion that is on the floor is that we accept the capital budget as presented. No? Oh, I'm sorry, yes. And your motion, could you repeat that? Or Stacy, would you repeat? Yeah, no. Sorry,
I have it very simply as that the pickleball capital project be removed.
Or then we could also amend that to be put forth to look at in 2019. Because after a year's worth of trial, then we will understand whether it's something that we really want or don't want. But knowing that it's going through the trial, it would be best for us, if we're doing a 2-year capital, to put the placeholder in there for 2019.
have you got that?
So,
Stacey?
Councillor Rose, just to clarify, that the pickleball court project be delayed to the 2019 budget? And I think your microphone is giving you some trouble. You good?
I'm
It's on,
good
okay.
now.
I have that the pickleball capital project be delayed to the 2019 budget process.
Capital project. Okay, I will, there's a mover and a seconder, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Council.
So
Councillor Levy.
at this point, there's no room for me to move that we go ahead with the 1 tennis court for pickleball option. No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw another hand. No? Okay. So now we have the original motion that's on the floor, that the 2018-2019 capital budget be adopted as presented. Have a mover, moved by Councillor LaRue, seconded. You did. Okay, thank you. All right. You were the seconder. All those in, oh, excuse me, yes. Councillor Rawson.
I have a question regarding Navy Lane. The budget cycles past, budget number 1 and number 2, had Navy Lane funded at $457,000 in budget carry-forward reserves. And now it's all put through as debt at $900,000 change. So I'm wondering why the carry-forward from years past is gone and why it's all being funded out of debt.
Carrie, if you could answer that
Through you,
question.
Madam Chair, to Councillor Rawson. Following the report that the Director of Public Works and myself had recommended that we defer the project based on the Main Street reconstruction project coming in over budget. The funding sources for Navy Lane are being utilized for the Main Street project. When Council decided to leave that project in, whether it be DC funded or rate funded, those funds have been prioritized and allocated to Main Street reconstruction.
So a follow-up, I totally disagree on this. Like, this has been in the budget the whole time, Navy Lane. We never removed it. When Brian brought this forward, the request was for $450,000 more dollars. We said, how are we going to find the $450,000? We never said this is $1 million project. We're looking for $450,000 more dollars. So to me, we're looking for $450,000 of debt to fund this. The reserve that we've been carrying forward for the last 3 years and building that forward has been there every time. It started there in draft 1 of this year. So from draft 1 to draft 3, I understand you moved into the Main Street, but this is back to planning to fail, failing to plan, planning to fail. Like, this is bad budgeting, bad process on us. We always did have this money here. So I hear what you're saying. I just think we're going to move the money back and just show where that comes from.
Carrie?
That's correct, and I could totally do that. Regardless of where the rates are coming from or which project they're going to, there will be debt incurred, but I could make that change to put it back to Navy Lane and increase the debt related to Main Street.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Your Worship?
So, Carrie, just understand the nuances of what you're saying here, but what's your professional opinion? So you're an accounting person here, so I understand Councillor Rawson's points and clarification on that. But at the end of the day, in your professional opinion, what is the best path? The one that Councillor Rawson is suggesting, or the one that you proposed here today? What is in the best financial interest of our citizens?
At this point, it's really a non-issue. It's just an accounting allocation. And certainly with our opportunity to be able to fund, borrow internally, we could do that. At this point, I know it's going to be debt, whether it's going to be internal or external. Thank you.
Yep, then I'm fine. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on other items? Yes, Councillor Rawson.
Thank you. I think last time we made an emotional decision about the outdoor rink. We started with pickleball, and we went down, and that went sideways, and all of a sudden we introduced an outdoor rink. So that's for $135,000. Even after the last budget cycle, we had a recess. I went and sat down there, and people said, and I remember asking Sherry the question, do we not have available ice time now? The answer was yes. So people were saying, well, why don't we just give free ice time up at the rink that's available now? That would make logical sense, but instead we're going to do $135,000. This past Sunday, I don't know what happened, but there was some malfunction of some sorts at the rink where some ice time was canceled. We can't maintain what we have, and now we want to add new ice surface. I'd rather see this $135,000 go into the reserve for the arena roof or something else, but not adding another asset. Every time we add another asset, we don't look at the operating cost. I think this is a bad move. I personally, let's look at what we have for excess ice time, let's give it to people, and let's put this into the arena reserves. That'll move.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Levy?
I completely agree with Councillor Ross, and it was an emotional decision, and on my part, I know, and I think we should have another look at that.
Yes, Your Worship.
I think you leave it in the budget. The feedback we got from the online news articles has been actually pretty positive. People actually liked it, and we don't have to have incur operating costs. Last time we had the outdoor rink, we had the Lions Club look after it for us. So there's creative ways to do this, but I think in general, citizens have provided feedback from when we had the rink there before that they enjoyed it, they liked it, and liked the concept of it, and it was something that they really missed when we didn't do it, and we heard about that. So it's in for next year's budget. It doesn't hurt us to have it in there. It gives us a full season to chat with citizens, and when council looks at the budget in 2019, we will all be better informed. So I'm fine with where it is. It's not costing us anything to have it there. It's all there in front of us to consider. It's all there for us to talk about our citizens over the next year. Comes to the 2019 budget, we're in a better spot to discuss it.
Thank you for those comments. Did you make your suggestion in the form of a motion? You moved it. I'd like to call for a seconder. Could you repeat? And Councillor Levy did agree with you. So, Stacey, did you get that?
I have that the outdoor ice rink capital project be removed from the 2019 capital plan.
Would you like to read that in its entirety for us, please?
Moved by Councillor Rossin that the outdoor ice rink capital project be removed from the 2019 capital plan and reallocated to the arena capital reserve. Seconded by Councillor Levy.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Louder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm fully happy with making that move. My only issue is that I wouldn't actually want to put it into the arena reserve. I was just thinking into the, because I know we're doing a study of our facilities and whatnot, so I'd rather just into the RCS reserve so that when the need comes up, then council can make those decisions.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Through you, Madam Chair. So this is DC, so you can't move it. It just stays in the development charges where it currently resides. It's in the piggy bank today as a development charge of $135,000. So if we take it out of next year's budget, it just stays where it is today in the DC.
Carrie, did you?
Through you, Madam Chair. Your Worship, that's correct. It is DC's. There is a $13,500 component that was proposed to come from the Community Development Fund. So if the project was to be removed, the funding transactions just would be removed along with it.
Thank you. There's further discussion. Councillor LaRue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, Councillor Rose brought it forward at our last meeting and brought up the importance of an outdoor rink or outdoor rinks and how a lot of people were hoping to see one and have one and so forth. So I would prefer to see it stay in the budget and that we can work with our Director of Recreation and look at something that could be feasible and possible on a piece of our own property and probably namely the property right next to our own arena. So I think we'd like to look into some of this and see what we can do and if we can't move forward with something like this.
Thank you for your comments. Further comments? Seeing none, Stacey, would you please read the motion again, please?
Councillor Rossin, are you looking for an amendment based on the DC conversation, or are we keeping it as is? Okay. Moved by Councillor Rossin that the outdoor ice rink capital project be removed from the 2019 capital plan and reallocated to the arena capital reserve. Seconded by Councillor Levy.
Thank you. There's no further discussion. Yes, Carrie.
Just to clarify that the last piece of that motion is inaccurate in the sense that there is no monies to transfer to reserve.
Okay,
It would remain in the Recreation DC Reserve Fund.
thank you. Okay, with that correction, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion failed. Okay, so we're back to well, we have accepted the capital, or do we need to go through that? I'm totally...
You have a move by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Mayette, but I don't believe that that motion has been
Okay, so
called for the
I do
vote.
need to call for the vote. So that's acceptance of the 2018-2019 capital budget as adopted here this evening. Yes, Carrie?
One final clarification in that the motion related to the 2018 and 2019 capital budget as amended related to the reallocation of the debt from Navy Lane to Main Street reconstruction.
As amended. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. The last part of this is further that the contribution of $382,485 is approved for the Penetanguishene Public Library to fund their 2018 operating requirements. Moved by Councillor Leroux, seconded by Councillor Mayette. Discussion? Yeah. Councillor LaRose?
I'm just trying to understand why they're asking for an extra $1,000 a day? What happened that it's 342,000?
382.
Okay, just over $1,000 a day then. Extra. What's the $382,000 for?
Well, we had asked them to come in at the 2.2%, and so there was some dollars that were dropped off their budget. Yes. Carrie, perhaps you could enlighten us?
Just to clarify, during draft one, in each of the drafts, the detailed information that has been provided for information purposes does outline the library's total budget request line by line. And I'm just looking at it to see what the major increases are, other than the same increases that the town is facing in terms of annual wage and benefit increases.
Madam Chair, if I may, this
Yes.
is all unnecessary, because they have control of their own operating budget, or we have control of the amount of money.
That is
And
correct.
if the 382,000 represents the 2.2%, that's
Yes,
what we all agreed to.
yes, okay. All right.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may, I think where we're getting hung up on is it's not an additional. The 382 is the total, 382,000 is the total contribution to the library,
Yes.
which is inclusive of the 2.2% increase.
Thank you for that. So now that we've had that discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? I do believe yes, Michelle and Doug. Opposed? Okay, it's carried. Your worship, you had something you wanted to bring forward.
Thank you. Just for council's consideration, so we settled into the county Simcoe budget yesterday at about 1%. And so what'll happen normally over the last 7 years is the county Simcoe, so we're sitting now, Carrie, at about 2.2%, is that right? Including OPP at the town level?
Correct.
So including OPP, right now, we're sitting at a 2.2% tax increase. I suspect that when you combine or consolidate the education in the county, that'll actually bring us down into a negative taxation for next year. So my motion simply is, and it's a further end, that no less than an overall 0% tax increase for town operating capital, OPP, county, and education occur, and that any tax reduction amount that occurs due to the consolidation of the town operating, town capital, OPP, county, and education tax be transferred to the asset management reserve. So that way, we're not going to go below zero. If the county saves us any money, we just tuck it into that capital reserve that we're looking to nest egg. So rather go negative, I'd like council to consider a 0% overall with any funds flowing to the asset. And I'd look for a seconder for that motion if I could.
Do I have a seconder for that motion?
No? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Louder, discussion. I think we all would like to have a 0% increase. Yes, Dan?
As much as that's a great news story, I would be voting no on it. I believe that when our financial audited statements came forth last week, and they said, again, that we were on average $500 a house higher than anybody else our size, I would suggest that if the opportunity gets to a negative, that would be a good thing.
For those comments, are there further comments? Yes, Councillor Louder.
Once again, I totally agree with Councillor Rose. If we have the opportunity to bring down tax, I think that's a great thing. I'd hate people to think that, well, it's an election year, and that's why they did it, because we, the town, came up with, I thought, a great budget. We did what we needed to, and we put what we thought was reasonable into the budget. And at the same time, if Simcoe County comes and gives us a benefit, I think we should let our people have it.
Well, we can have the discussion at that time. It doesn't have to be written in stone this evening. So am I hearing that? Well, he has a motion on the floor. He does have a seconder, so I will call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion that has been brought forward this evening? Those opposed? Sorry, Your Worship, you lost. Question period from the media and the public. We have none. So I guess I just want to thank our staff. This has been a process, but I would like to congratulate everyone. I hear other municipalities talking about their budget process, and some of them are talking 7%, 5%. There's a lot of issues out there, and we're in a very different position, and I think that's because of good accounting that was done for a couple of years back. So it's paying dividends for us all in 2017 for 2018. So I just wanted to thank everyone for all their input.
All in favor? Works.